welcome everyone to the People's House.
Mr. Speaker, will you please call the House to order?
The bill is passed.
This bill says that New York understands the breadth and the depth of the problem.
Hi, I'm Tom Abinanti. I'm your Assemblyman. I represent those of you who live in the 92nd Assembly District. That's the town of Greenburgh and all of its villages and unincorporated area, and the town of Mount Pleasant, including its villages and its unincorporated area. Today I'm speaking with Jerry Smith, who is the Executive Director of ANIBIC.
Correct.
What is ANIBIC?
ANIBIC is an acronym that stands for the Association for Neurologically Impaired Brain Injured Children, and it is a bit of a misnomer in that it was originally formed some 50-odd years ago, and at that point the founders weren't really sure how to accurately describe what their children were experiencing, and they described it as a neurological disorder or a neurological impairment. And over that 50-year span, the name has stayed, but the true population whom we serve are individuals with developmental disabilities. That's
the term that everybody's using today, developmentally disabled,
that
right?
People use today.
And that includes a whole broad spectrum of people, from autism
people with mental retardation, people with cerebral palsy, a number of other conditions, somewhat less well known, but people who have typically cognitive impairments for
This is an area that's now finally starting to get the attention that it deserves. We're dealing with a large number of people, many of whom in the past I think were just kind of put off into the background and forgotten about.
I would agree to an extent. I've been doing this for, it doesn't seem that long, but a little over 30 years. And when I started, it was much less understood and accepted. And fortunately, it has moved in a path towards people paying a lot more attention to it, and we're seeing some of the real benefits of that. Some of them, like people, when I started doing this 30 years ago, people didn't live into their senior years, unfortunately, because of the health care that they received and because of the lack of services that they received. They often died in their 30s and 40s. Now we have people living into their 60s and 70s and living fairly normal lives in terms of time as compared to the rest of us. Where I would challenge what you said is I'm not sure we give enough attention to it, and that may be my bias, but
I fully agree with you. I think you're 100% correct. I was just making a comparison, but in no way do I think that we're doing enough. Before we go on with what it is you do, tell me a little bit about you.
Sure.
Where are you from?
I live in Carmel, New York, and I have in Putnam County for about the last 20 years or so. I got into this field as a graduate student at NYU, studying psychology. I was going to be a psychologist, and I didn't have enough money to pay for my education. And I decided
common problem.
I decided to take a part-time job to finance that education, and it was in this field. It was with the Association for the Help of Retarded Citizens at that point, and I thought that I would do it for a few months just to earn a few dollars, and that began a 30-year trek of falling in love with the population, needing to care for them and providing care for them.
Now, ANIBIC is located in Queens.
ANIBIC is in Queens, New York, in Oakland
So you
Gardens.
must really like what you're doing, because you drive from Carmel
I do.
down to Queens.
I do.
Almost every day.
I don't mind the drive, and for me, it's as in the drive-in, I'm on the phone setting up my day.
Hands-free, of course, right?
Hands-free, always hands-free. But I drive way too much to use my hands. I'd be in jail. But every day is a little bit different because we deal with people. It's not a job where I know exactly what's going to be the next day's work. It depends on caring for this many people and what has occurred overnight, what's going to occur during the day, and setting that up for my day. And then on the way home, it's similar.
So you started with ARC.
Correct.
Under its old name, the Association. The change of their name from Association for Retarded Children to ARC in a way reflects the understanding.
Correct.
And the what should we say? The understanding of our community, that we are not dealing with just a number or a disease or a condition. We are dealing with people.
Correct. Many agencies have struggled with the name change because they don't want to lose the history that they've had, and many of whom had fought for that history, but want to make it a more accurate description of what we actually do. And you're absolutely right. We deal with people. And we don't like, I don't like to define, nor do my colleagues like to define individuals by their challenges.
Right.
We need to define people by who they are. And in fact, one component of who they are is a challenge that we want to address.
They have different abilities, if you want to look at it from the positive
we should
point of view.
certainly look at, I always look at how we can enhance somebody's abilities and help support their challenges.
One of the parents of a child with autism, who's got a condition similar to my son, said that when you see one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism.
Correct.
It's not a condition that is repeated over and over and over again. It's exhibited very differently in every person that you see.
Every single person that you see shows that condition differently, as you would expect. You can't say
people are different.
You can't say that someone who is Irish is going to be exactly the same. They may have some similar traits because of background or particular issues within their makeup, but they are all individuals, much more individual than they are identical.
Now, what do you do? What does your organization do? How do you help people with these conditions?
My organization was set up and continues to try to meet the needs of the individuals who we provide care for, and that is a broad statement which in reality, where the rubber meets the road, is we provide everything that they need, from residential care, so folks who can no longer live at home, we provide housing for them, and we provide care in those housings. Our perspective has always been that we want to provide an amount of care that will allow that person to be as independent as they possibly can, give them the dignity of risk to be able to achieve what they can achieve, but provide an environment that's safe and effectively deals with the challenges that they have.
On the housing, do you have group homes, individual homes, or large?
We have group homes, which typically have 4 to 8 people in them. We have apartments that can be singular apartments or 2-bedroom apartments with 2 people in them. We also provide a limited amount of care to people who live at their own homes, and we provide some supports to them in those homes. Some of the care we provide is 24 hours a day. Some of the care that we provide may be 6 or 8 hours a day.
So it's a broad spectrum of support.
Again, for that individuality issue, we look to provide what the individual needs. That's where it starts.
Now, you talk about housing. What else do you do?
We also provide day services, which incorporates typically an attempt to get someone into the workforce. Depending on their level of ability and skill set at a given time, we bring them in and we initially do something called pre-vocational services. So we help somebody to understand what it means to come to an office every day or come to a job every day, what it means to be able to interact with others during that day.
Help them acclimate to
help them acclimate to basic job-like skills.
Do you have job coaches?
We do have job coaches. And job coaches work with them in those early phases and then actually bring them out to a work site. We help them to negotiate work sites and to actually be placed. I am proud to say that we have some folks who are working in excess of 15 years at the same place and are doing exceptionally well.
I have seen a growth in the need for services like yours. First of all, because there seem to be a lot of kids transitioning out of the school programs. Our kids are qualified to stay in school until they're 21, but those last few years are basically an attempt to acclimate them, I'll use that word again, to a different world. And secondly, I've seen a lot of situations where people with disabilities were living at home and their parents now are really getting too old to care for them, let's say, or to supervise them. And so when you put the two of them together, I know in Westchester County, I don't think there have been any new homes opened in the last several years, and yet we have people who are aging out of the school system and whose parents are now aging out of an ability to take care of them. So you've got both ends of the spectrum, the age spectrum,
Correct.
putting pressure on the system.
And it puts a significant amount of pressure on the system, and that pressure does not go away by not addressing it. So it is not an uncommon event for me to be approached by a parent who's unable to care for their child anymore, their adult child, and needs to have them in services, and there are no services. We over-enroll our services to the extent that we can, as long as we can keep them
Where does
safe.
the money come from?
The money comes from the state and from Medicaid, typically. The vast majority of our funding comes from those sources, but it does not pay for enough of what we actually do. And we are not greedy, nor are we overindulgent. We work on as bare bones as we possibly can to provide that safe, home-like structure for our folks, but we don't have enough money to do it.
I'm seeing the budgets becoming tighter and tighter and tighter in the mental health area. Are you experiencing that at the other end?
We have experienced it to a crushing event. We have had our budgets cut 4%, 5%, 3%.
And you have more people, and you're trying to...
Cumulatively over the last couple of years, and we have more and more people whom we need to provide care. And the cost of living hasn't gone down.
Right. How does somebody get into the service?
Traditionally, people would get into our service through the process of coming to an agency like ANIBIC, being evaluated. We would enter into a discussion with
So a consumer choice.
A consumer choice. And we would then determine what that person needed along with the parent or the guardian and the individual themselves. And then we would bring that to the oversight agency within the state, and they would and we would negotiate a funding package to help provide the care that they needed. In the last year or so, there's been a change to that. The change to that has been a process called the front door. And this front door process is one in which the agencies are no longer responsible for taking that first step, but we are responsible for directing those individuals and educating those individuals who need care to go to the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities as a first step.
So the Office of People with Disabilities now is charged with screening people and figuring out where they should go?
Correct.
And so it's no longer a consumer choice, it's now basically an agency choice.
They would argue that it is still the consumer's choice, and they will help the consumers with those choices. I would argue that it is less appropriate to do it in that manner than to do it in the manner
How's this
it was.
new system working?
In my opinion, it is broken. There is not enough resources within the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities to process the number of people who are attempting to come into the system, so it is not an uncommon thing to hear that the front door is closed.
I've heard the same thing from consumers, that they're having difficulty accessing places like yours for help. And I've also looked at our budgets, and it appears that we're cutting the Office of OPWDD, and so they're going to have less employees, and from what you're telling me, they now have an additional responsibility with fewer employees to perform this function.
They have a significantly larger task to accomplish with significantly less employees, so it is illogical to assume that they can do it. And unfortunately, the folks who are most vulnerable, who are approaching this system, don't have the wherewithal to negotiate it. So it becomes somewhat of a revolving door rather than a front door. And they come back to us, and we are unable to do what I think we need to do. So we'll keep fighting.
And you are in the same situation as many of the other agencies that are out there trying to help people?
I believe all of our colleagues are in the same boat.
Well, I appreciate your joining us. I wish we could end on a more positive note, but I commend you for the work that you do and the work that your employees do. It's really, really important to our community.
Great.
And I want to thank everyone for joining us. This is Tom Abinanti. If you need help, please don't hesitate to give me a call at 914-631-1605.